check.
Premier event, and we have billed this as the Libertarian Duel in the Sun. So we're going to start with 20-minute presentation by Kevin, the wonderful, Mr. Wonderful O'Leary. Let's hear it for Kevin. To be followed by John Mackey for 20 minutes, and then I am going to be the moderator of a rock and roll debate, and boy, do I have the goods on both of these gentlemen. You can't wait. So please, let us give a warm welcome to Kevin O'Leary.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot. You know, I'm going to take you on a little journey now, and we're going to learn something together. Shark Tank is going into its 11th year, which is a shock. No television shows last that long, and it's been a remarkable journey. It's one of the top shows for families now. It's just been nominated for its 5th Academy or Emmy Award this morning. I love working on it, but I've also learned a lot. And so, you know, people always ask when they're being invested, the sharks that are investing in Shark Tank are always asking, what's proprietary about this business? How do I protect my capital? If I invest in it, how do I get the money back? It's always about, does it have a patent? Well, I began to wonder years ago when millions of people started watching Shark Tank, what's it worth just to get on the show, forget about a deal? What's it worth to have your idea, your product, your service shown to 10 million people? That's got to have some value. So I decided to try something in year 4. I thought, why don't I invest in something that's a commodity, that's ubiquitous in America, of which there are tens of thousands of companies doing the same thing, and pull one of them up and stick it on Shark Tank and see what happens. Could we measure the effects of that? Now, why I want to show you this company, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes of video, is it forever changed, and I mean forever, changed the way we as investors thought about the medium of television. It forever changed the way we thought about social media. It forever changed the way we looked and analyzed customer acquisition costs. This deal changed everything, not only for themselves, but for every company that came after it. It was the game changer. The company is called Wicked Good Cupcakes. What's more of a commodity than a cupcake? Sugar, water, flour, butter. Anybody can make a cupcake. Within 5 miles of this hotel, there are 5 commercial kitchens making cupcakes for all the coffee shops. You've never heard of any of them, and you never will. But this company turned themselves into a monster in ways that we had never seen before. 2 women did this. Let's watch a couple of minutes of this deal from years ago, and then I want to share the numbers with you, and we're all going to learn something today about how business has changed so much in America because of basically what Wicked Good Cupcakes figured out. Here we go. Here's Wicked Good Cupcakes from Cohasset, Massachusetts.
My name's Tracy Noonan, and this is my daughter Danielle. We're from Cohasset, Massachusetts.
And our company is Wicked Good Cupcakes. We're from Boston, and everything's wicked piss, I hear.
Our cupcakes are baked fresh daily from scratch. No boxes or mixes are ever used. We're at a point where our company is growing too fast for us to keep up. And we actually have a new twist on how to share our Wicked Good Cupcakes with the nation. I'm Tracy Noonan, and this is my daughter Danielle. We own and operate Wicked Good Cupcakes.
We're here today seeking $75,000 in return for 20% equity in our company. We received tons of requests to ship our cupcakes nationwide. It was a big challenge, though, trying to figure out how to keep them fresh and intact, and that's when we came up with the idea of shipping them in a jar.
Our cupcake jars are baked fresh daily. We layer them with homemade frosting and filling, ship them in gift boxes with spoons so they're ready to eat right out of the package.
Basically, they appeal to anyone with a mouth.
Well, ladies, let me say welcome to the Shark Tank.
Thank
from
you.
a fellow Bostonian. I live on Marlborough Street.
Oh, I love grocery.
That is one damn good jar of cake.
Growth potential that we have discovered with these is phenomenal.
Tracy,
And
it's not patented. Someone else can put a cake in a jar and ship it across the country.
absolutely, they could.
So tell me what your plan is. How are you going to grow this business quickly?
We want to be the Ben & Jerry's of cupcakes in a jar.
How many days is the shelf life of the jar?
7 to 10.
7. So you've got to bake it and sell it right away and ship it, because it's going to be 2 days before it's in somebody's mouth, right?
Correct.
Have you talked to anybody about extending the shelf life? Because I know it's something that you can do.
Yeah, with preservatives.
The problem, if you put preservatives in, it's the taste is wonderful.
Yeah,
That's exactly the question. Will it alter the taste?
What does each one cost to make, and what do you sell them for?
The 8-ounce jars cost $2.15 to make. We retail that for $5.95. The 16-ounce jar costs $3 to make, and we retail that for $8.95.
This product will never be in retail. It's always going to be an online. Somebody buys it, you bake it, you send it overnight to them.
Actually, we do have some wholesale clients. We have a coffee company up in Massachusetts.
What are you charging her a jar?
We're charging her $3 a jar.
It's not enough margin for you.
Okay, but here's the thing. We're buying in such pathetic bulk right now.
Okay,
If we had
Tracy,
more
in
money,
your best case scenario, I give you the $75,000.
Yep.
Tell me what your margins will be.
Sure.
Right now it costs you $2.15 to make the small one and $3 for the big one.
Right.
How much can you reduce the cost?
I believe we can get the smaller jars down to $1.45.
Question I have is, on the mason jars, are there any alternative that would allow you to reduce your costs considerably?
I gotta say, the mason jars are a really big draw for people.
Exactly.
You can
It's a
see it.
It's
homemade-
motherhood and apple
it's-
pie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a homemade product in a crafty container.
Right, it's suggest homemade, right? is what
Right,
it does.
exactly.
Right.
And people do say that to us.
Come on, Mr. Wonderful.
I'm going to make you an offer. You may not like it. I love the product. I hate the margins. I'll give you the $75,000. I don't want any equity. I want $1 from every jar.
$1?
Silence,
$1?
please. What? Let me get the offer out. I want $1 from every jar until I get my $75,000 back, which means you have to sell 75,000 jars. All right? And then I want it to drop to 50 cents in perpetuity. And you decide what to do with the business.
Can we just scoot out in the hall for 1 second?
Trust me, you're not going to get a worse offer than that, so you probably should talk.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
All right.
How much money does that leave them with if they give you $1?
Practically nothing.
Think what you're doing, Kevin.
Hey, listen, this will give them incentive to figure their margin problem out.
Okay, what's 50 cents for every jar? Yeah, perpetuity. What's perpetuity? It means forever.
I like my deal, and I'll sleep tonight with a cupcake beside me.
Follow your lead, lady. All right.
So Tracy, Danielle, welcome back.
Thank you.
4 sharks were out, and Mr. Wonderful made you an offer. He's giving you the $75,000, but he wants no equity. He wants $1 off every cupcake jar until he gets paid back, and then 50 cents from there on in until you can't bake anymore.
Don't do a deal that could cripple your business.
I agree with him. Don't do something that you'll regret afterwards.
Exactly.
Oh, Tracy, talk is so cheap.
Okay, we'd like to come back to you with 40 cents a jar
Damn.
in perpetuity.
$0.45, you have a deal.
Come to mama.
That's great.
Thank you.
Wow.
That's wonderful. And the product really is fantastic.
Thank you.
Get baking.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Congratulations.
They were delicious.
I'm going to be very happy.
Mr. Wonderful will see his return sooner than he thinks, and we're just going to do great.
Okay, so what happens to this company? No one's ever heard of Wicked Good Cupcakes before it airs at 9 o'clock on a Friday night. Now, one of the biggest problems these companies have, even today on Shark Tank, is trying to guesstimate how many eyeballs are going to be driven to their website because they're on national television. And invariably, they have to either rent cloud services, get more servers, get a bigger server farm, but it's expensive. And it's a one-time event. So they struggle. What usually happens is they underestimate it, their website blows up, they miss the opportunity. Not this time. Here's what happened here, the first of its kind. The husband of Tracy Noonan worked at Fidelity in their online services businesses as a statistician. He went to his bosses in Back Bay, Boston, where they had a massive server farm supporting their online trading activity. And he said to his bosses, look, we're a Cohasset company. You've heard of Shark Tank. We're going to be on Friday night. Could you lend me server capacity from 9 o'clock Boston time to 2 in the morning in LA as the show sweeps in prime time through the nation, just in case anybody wants to order some cupcakes? And they said, you know what? We want to support you. We want to support local small business. We'll do that for you. Well, that night, we nearly took down Fidelity. This story was so compelling because food is very difficult to sell on television. Why? Because you can't taste it. But you saw what was happening there. That jar is 660 calories of cake. You're supposed to unscrew it, take a bite out, put the cap back on, stick it in the fridge. Cuban inhaled 2 of them. Everybody saw that happen. They wanted to try it too. And thousands and thousands and thousands of orders came piling in. In the morning, when Scott Noonan went to Fidelity at his desk and started looking at the orders, and this is where you're going to learn the secret sauce and what changed this whole thing forever. The number one reasons business fail in America within 3 years is one singular reason. They're never able to get their customer acquisition costs below the lifetime value of the customer. A fancy way of saying they go bankrupt advertising. But what happened here, as Scott was looking through all of these tens of thousands of orders, what were his customer acquisition costs on those people? 0. He immediately went home and said, you're not going to believe this. We have thousands of orders. They're not asking more information. They want to taste it. They want to buy it. They want to try it. And we got to ship these cupcakes. And he said to his wife and daughter, you ladies have to get back on television el pronto. He saw the light. And this is before social media was really going crazy. It was just beginning. So here they are the next week on an ABC local affiliate talking about their Shark Tank experience. 12,000 more customers, customer acquisition costs, 0. Here they are, a few months later on ABC 2020 prime time, doing what was called the sales challenge, using cupcakes as the example to test people on the streets of Manhattan's ability to sell to total strangers. 36,000 more customers, customer acquisition cost, 0. Here they are with Kris Jenner. What does Kris Jenner have to do with cupcakes? Nothing. She has nothing to do with cupcakes. She's on television. Thousands more customers. Here they are a few years ago in Faneuil Hall selling their 1 millionth jar to a lady from Philadelphia. Quick back of the envelope, 1 million cupcakes, 45 cents a pop, $450,000. I made my money back in 28 days. This is the highest IRR deal in Shark Tank history, the first royalty deal in Shark Tank history, the first time you could show your alignment with a family business by not taking any equity from them. These 2 ladies are millionaires now. They don't live in Boston anymore. It's too cold there. They've moved to Carolina. It's still the #1 cupcake FedExed in America today. They did it by telling America a story. An open, transparent, honest discussion of their journey as a mother-daughter in building a business. What Scott was doing here is he was basically taking the video from all these television appearances and chopping it up into 9 seconds, 29 seconds, 59 seconds, and posting it on every single social media platform he could get. Every blog about weddings, every gifting, every cooking blog, everything. Getting hundreds of thousands of customers, customer acquisition cost, 0. No one had ever done this before on Shark Tank this way. It was happenstantial, but in America today, even large companies want to build businesses with a direct connection with their customer. They want a direct dialogue, an honest, transparent communication, because people are not stupid and they can smell bullshit a mile away today. And social media is so powerful that it's changed the way American business operates. It's a higher purpose, a higher ground, a higher test. And if you're not honest, you get slaughtered. You know many examples of how this happens. But what they did here was extraordinary. I want to share something with you that if it's the only thing you remember from my presentation this morning, I think this is what it should be. Shark Tank, it turns out, has been successful all around the world, in 34 countries where it's called Dragon's Den. In England, it's been on for 17 years. In Canada, in Brazil, now in China, in Australia. There have been hundreds of thousands of pitches in different languages and different geographies from entrepreneurs to investors. And it turns out that there are 3 common attributes present in every situation where the entrepreneur gets funded. Does not determine the outcome of the business, has nothing to do with the outcome of the business. This is the beginning of the journey, the hardest part, their first check. These attributes are present not some of the time, they're present 100% of the time, all over the world, in multiple languages. So what are they? Number 1, you have to be able to articulate the opportunity in 90 seconds or less. Hi, I'm from Cohasset, Massachusetts. I take cupcakes, I put them in a mason jar, and I FedEx them to you. I get it. I know exactly what you do. It turns out in life, and I don't care if you're an entrepreneur, a mother, a general, a politician, a teacher, if you can't explain where you're going, nobody will follow you. This is number 1 importance. Communicate where you want to go and what you want to do, paramount. Many times it's under 60 seconds. It's clear, concise, and crystal. Number 2, what is it about you that can take this great idea and execute on it? After all, there's millions of great ideas. A great idea without executional skills is worthless. Did you work at a competitor? Has it been in your family business for generations? Have you tried 3 times before and failed, and now you know what you did wrong? I personally prefer to invest in entrepreneurs who have felt the sting of failure and are very motivated by the fear of failing again. It's very powerful, but it doesn't matter. What is it about the idea attached to you that makes the probability of success higher? After all, investors want the highest return with the lowest risk. Now, when you get a great idea and executional skills attached to it, things start to happen. You can feel the room changing. It starts to sizzle like an isotope, and the checkbooks are coming out. But there's one more, and this one is the killer. I've seen the oxygen sucked out of a room this size when this happens so quickly. Imagine, in the context of Shark Tank, you've beat out 100,000 applications. There you are on the carpet. The sharks all want to invest in you. They love your idea. And then this happens. You have to know your numbers. How big is the market? How fast is it growing? What's the break-even analysis? You heard Tracy to the penny. She knew the cost of her big jar, her small jar. She knew her business model. She knew her challenge. She needed volume. If you get the first 2 right in any situation in life and you don't know your numbers, you deserve to burn in hell. And I will put you there myself. But if you get these right, your probability of success goes geometrically higher. This is remarkable. I teach this to graduating cohorts of engineers now. This actually decides success in your ability to pitch your idea and drive your team forward. Before I leave you, I'm going to share one other thing that I think is rather remarkable with you. I've been doing this a long time. I have funded over 50 companies, over 14 years. That's a large portfolio. I have over 50 right now that are active. In 10 years, over a decade, 95% of my returns have come from the companies run by women. Why is that? What are they doing? It's extraordinary. What I've learned is they're exceptionally good at mitigating risk, at setting goals that are achievable and returning capital faster. It's an extraordinary outcome. And look, I'm not trying to start gender warfare here today. I would give money to a goat if I could get a return. I don't care. But what I've learned is what I do today is that I gather my CEOs together every year in South Beach, Florida, so that the women there that have done so well can show their skill sets and their talents and also their strategies to the rest of the crew. I have become a huge advocate for women. All of my bond desk is run by women now. And I'm almost at a situation where the producers are getting angry with me because I don't invest in any guy deals anymore. And I say, why? I'm making all my money with women. I'm happy with my situation. Think about that going forward, the power. You want something done? Give it to a busy mother. That's what I say. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. So, Kevin, thank you very much. We just heard the cold, hard truth about business and investing. And now we are going to hear from John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods Market and author of the very influential Conscious Capitalism, the Stakeholder Philosophy. So now he's going to speak for 20 minutes and then let the debate begin. So please give a warm welcome to John Mackey, co-ambassador to Freedom Fest. All right.
Thanks, Mark. I need the clicker. Oh, here it is.
Yeah, I think it's right there.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if we're getting everything to debate about because Kevin didn't say anything up there I didn't agree with. So I'll try to say some things that he will disagree with, perhaps. So I've only got 20 minutes, so I'm going to do kind of an abbreviated version of conscious capitalism, which is the way Whole Foods operates. They've only taken 3 minutes from me, so this is going to be tough. So first, I'm like the biggest capitalist in the world. I think capitalism is the greatest system that humanity's ever created. And some of the evidence for that is just look what's happened with increasing wealth. There's almost, until capitalism was invented, there was almost no progress in this world. And then with it, the Industrial Revolution, it's just exploded. In the last 200 years, if you go back 200 years ago, the average income levels were at the level of Sierra Leone now. 94% of everybody alive was poor. 94% of the people made less than $2 a day 200 years ago, adjusted for today's dollars. Since then, across the planet, it's gone up about 10x. 24 times in the United States, 41 times in Hong Kong, and an astounding 76 times in South Korea, 23 times just since 1960. Although you'll never read it in the media, the fact is that capitalism is wiping out poverty on the planet Earth, and very rapidly. Here you can see it, again, in a graph over the last 200 years, where we had 94% making less than $2 a day, 85% made less than $1 a day, and today less than 10% live on less than $2 a day. It's about economic freedom. The countries that have the highest degree of economic freedom have the highest per capita incomes. So the mostly free have per capita incomes of $40,000 a year. The least free, the more socialistic countries, have the lowest overall incomes. I put this up there. It's the heritage, and I'll make 2 points from this economic freedom index. The first point is the United States is not number one. Hong Kong's number one. We now rank number 12. I will point out that's down from about 18 a couple of years ago due to some deregulations that the Trump administration's put in place along with business tax cuts. So we've moved up to number 12. I put the Scandinavian countries in white. And that's because they're often held out as sort of these socialistic countries that we should be modeling ourselves after. Actually, they're capitalistic, very high degrees of economic freedom. But I'll save that for my debate that I'm going to do on Saturday on socialism and capitalism, so come for that one. So really, wealth isn't the problem on this planet. The problem on the planet is not wealth, it's poverty. And wealth doesn't cause poverty. Poverty is the default condition of the human race. People are born poor. What has to be explained is not poverty, because poverty is how we naturally are. What needs to be explained is wealth. And capitalism is a solution. Capitalism is creating wealth for literally billions of people on the planet. And the problem is not that there's an unequal distribution of wealth in the world. The problem is that there's an unequal distribution of economic freedom. If we could distribute economic freedom equally, we would increase wealth everywhere. Business is good because business creates value. It creates value for other people. It's the greatest value creator in the world. And business is ethical because it doesn't use coercion to create wealth. It creates wealth through voluntary exchange for mutual gains and benefits. And business is noble because it can elevate our existence and take it to a higher plane. And finally, it's heroic because it's business that's lifting people out of poverty. So if capitalism is so great, why is it so disliked? And it is disliked. Look at these polls. The Gallup poll shows that only 25% of Americans think big business, that they have any confidence in big business. The Harris poll shows that 86% of people think big companies have too much influence on government. The Roper poll shows that only 2% of investors think that CEOs are very trustworthy. 2%. And 72% believe wrongdoing is commonplace at most companies. Here's one I don't have on there, but you can, if you watch television shows and movies, statistics show that approximately 90% of all the murders that you will watch on television or in movies are committed by businessmen. In reality, we commit far less than 1% of the murders in the world. And the Gallup one, though, is the one that's most disturbing to me personally. In 2018, only 45% of millennials had a positive view of capitalism, while 51% had a positive view of socialism. It's almost unfathomable to me. So why is this? Why is business and capitalism, which are such great things, have such bad reputations? And we think there's three major reasons. One is the world is changing and its people are evolving. And third, the defenders of business tell the wrong narrative about what business is. So let's look at evolution. 155 years ago, slavery was still legal in half of the United States. 100 years ago, women didn't have the right to vote. 75 years ago, most of the world was organized into colonial empires. 55 years ago, in my lifetime, when I was a little boy growing up in Houston, Texas, I saw clear evidence of segregation. There were colored bathrooms and colored water fountains, and that was in my lifetime when I was just a child. And South Africa still had apartheid. 55 years ago, there was almost no environmental consciousness. It was a totally new idea. 30 years ago, communism and socialism were still the organizing political philosophies for over half the planet. 22 years ago, there were no smartphones. Pretty hard to believe, since there's like an entire generation completely addicted to them. iPods or iPads and Google, Facebook, Tesla, Alibaba, Uber, Netflix, and Airbnb didn't even exist. Just think how much the world has changed in just the last 22 years by these companies alone. We're more connected than we were and ever have been. There are now more active telephone numbers on this planet than there are people alive. And Facebook has 2.4 billion active users. We're better educated. If you go back to the year 1900, only 14% of American adults had a high school diploma. 14%. Now that That figure's gone up to about 85, almost 90%, counting GEDs. Only 3% in 1900 of American adults had a college degree. That's gone up now. With the younger generation is closing in on closer to 40%. We're better educated. But most importantly, we're simply more conscious than we've ever been before. Collectively, we're more mindful and awake. There's a better understanding of the consequences of our actions. For many people, there's a greater commitment to the truth, a finer ethical sense of what's right and wrong. There's a rejection of violence. Although, again, you never know this in the media, there are far fewer wars, far fewer people are kidnapped, murdered, and raped every year today than any other time in history that we know of. We're more inclusive, and there's a greater sense of environmental awareness. So what's it going to take for companies to flourish in the future? How can we redeem the reputation of business and capitalism? How can we keep our economic freedom before we lose it? To be more successful in the future, companies are going to have to exemplify a more conscious way of being. And that leads us to conscious capitalism. What is it? It's a new narrative about how we're going to explain business in the world. It starts with higher purpose, the importance of all the stakeholders, a different type of leadership, and creating cultures where people can flourish. It starts with purpose. Business needs to shift the narrative from talking about profit maximization to a narrative about purpose maximization. What's the purpose of a business? I mean, if you go to a cocktail party and you ask people what the purpose of a business is, try it sometime. I have. And what you'll normally hear is people will say, what do you mean, what's the purpose of business? Everybody knows the purpose of business is to make money. Right? Isn't that what we think the purpose of business is? It's such an odd answer. What's the purpose of a doctor? They're well paid. No, purpose of doctors to heal people. What's the purpose of teachers? To educate. Architects design buildings, engineers construct things. Every profession refers back to some type of value creation for other people. Only business, defined by its enemies, the Marxists and the socialists, say it's all about money. And then the defenders of business agree and say that's right, it's all about the money. And then we are surprised when 51% of young people don't think they prefer socialism to capitalism, or CEOs aren't trusted. It's the wrong narrative. Great companies have great purposes. I'll name 3. Thought I better put Amazon on here since they own Whole Foods. Amazon's higher purpose, and this, before we did the deal with Amazon, this is the one-on-one I had with Jeff to talk about Amazon's higher purpose. Our vision is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. In a lot of ways, I think they're fulfilling that purpose. How about Google? Our mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Quick question, how many people in this room have used Google in the last 24 hours? Exactly. They didn't exist 22 years ago. Whole Foods, our purpose is to nourish people on the planet. Talk about stakeholders briefly. They all matter. It isn't just the investors that matter. Yes, profits are important. My company is extremely profitable. Profits matter. But you know the best way to understand it? It's like, my body has to produce red blood cells or I'll die. It doesn't follow the purpose of my life is to produce red blood cells. Similarly, business must make money or it will die. It doesn't follow that that's why it exists, to just make money. It creates value in the world. Business is the greatest value creator in the world. It creates value for customers. It creates value for the people that work for it. It creates value for the suppliers that trade with it. It creates value for the investors, and it creates value in the communities. And that's the narrative that we need to tell about business. That it's the value creator, not just for the investors, but for everyone that trades with the business. Here's some of the things conscious leaders do. They create a shared purpose. I can just imagine people showing up at Whole Foods, going to the first day and would say, oh, we're so glad. Welcome to Whole Foods. Your job while you're here is to maximize shareholder value. We want to make as much money as possible. Thanks for joining up. No, leaders create shared purposes that inspire and motivate people to give their best for the organization. Conscious leaders are here to make a positive difference. They want to make the world better in some type of significant way. They inspire and they mobilize people. Good leaders, conscious leaders, help people to grow and evolve. They develop leadership potential. They unleash creativity. They discern the unique strengths and gifts that each individual has. Conscious leaders create win-win strategies and not trade-offs. They find strategies that allow all the stakeholders to simultaneously win and prosper and flourish. And once we begin to think win-win-win instead of win-lose, we transform the way we move in the world and the way we connect with people. So at the end of the day, money is important, but it makes a big difference in how we make our money in business. And business is not a game. Yes, we're in Las Vegas, but it's not a casino. Business is not one where winners take all and everybody else is a loser. That's not really what business is. It's the wrong metaphor for business. And business is not a machine. Business uses machine, but it's not a machine itself. Business is not a math equation. It uses algorithms, it uses math, but that's not the essence of what it is. It's certainly not war. Yes, there's competition in business, but it's not a war to wipe everybody else out. Again, that's the wrong metaphor. That falls into the hands of the haters of business. Business is about the real lives of real people. Business is one of the most human things that we can do. And so we must therefore measure our success in business by the way in which we improve the lives of other people. That is what business is about. It's about improving the lives of other people by creating value for them. And that is a very brief overview of conscious capitalism. Thank you very much.
Notice how I just ran up these stairs. You see, it pays to adopt a whole food strategy. All right, so I'm going to sit here in the middle. John, you sit over here. And we have Kevin over here. And let the debate begin. Now, John has thrown down the gauntlet to Kevin O'Leary by saying business has a higher purpose than just making money. You, on the other hand, Mr. O'Leary, are famous for saying that it's only about making the money. If you want a friend, buy a dog. Now, are you willing to repent of this statement and accept John's vision of business, the new vision of conscious capitalism? What say ye?
I'll up the ante. I like John's presentation, but I'll disagree with a few points. I'll pick on one right away. Business is a war. It's an absolute war. If you don't have that attitude of wiping out your competition, stealing their market share, and salting the ground that they used to be on, then I don't want to invest with you, because your competitor is going to do that to you. This is a global competition today. Most of my companies compete with Chinese and Indian and Vietnamese knockoffs. We can't even litigate them. We have to fight them every way we can. We try and bring the heavy hand of law here on them, and we do everything in our power to fight them, and it is a war. So, you don't have to like everybody you invest with. You need winners, not losers. So let's start there. I like that analogy a lot, and it's a pep speech I give to most of my companies.
John, your response.
Well, it's a terrible metaphor. No, think about it. So, Kevin, what are the rules in war? Are there rules in war?
No, there are actually there are rules. There are rules of war. It's called the Geneva Convention. And in the rules of business are set out by governments in each jurisdiction where you compete. There are no rules in China. They just steal from me there, which is why I'm very happy that we have a new administration that is going to hold them to the fire, because I'm sick of it. I've been doing it for 15 years.
So,
John?
So, again, think about it for a minute. Yes, there's competition in business. It's not the primary element about business. Competition occurs. Competition to serve customers better, compete for higher quality, lower prices, an overall better experience. So there's competition. Competition is not a synonym for war. In war, you try to kill people. I don't know, Kevin, do your entrepreneurs, are they permitted to go out and shoot the competition?
No, but if I can put them out of business, I'm okay with it.
So that's not war. So that's competition. Competition does not equal war. So, but to describe business as war plays into the hands of the enemies of business, the enemies of capitalism, by making it seem ruthless and uncaring. And because there are no rules in war, Geneva Convention aside, people do things in wars that are horrible. And so I think
John,
comparing business to war is a bad metaphor. And you are playing into the hands of our enemies.
In fact, let me just mention that John speaks regularly to MBA students. I have attended where he has spoken to standing room only crowds. No doubt you speak at standing room only crowds too, but probably not on college campuses.
I do.
Because people probably have a very negative view of your view that it's only about making money. It sounds like you're a very greedy person. Is greed a virtue in your business? In your perspective?
It has its place. And let me explain something that I want to point out about your presentation, John, which, you are trying to solve a different problem by repositioning business in a way that takes it out of the focus right now of a very negative connotation, as you've pointed out it has. It's almost as if business is the ant under the magnifying glass of a 13-year-old burning it on the sidewalk these days. I agree with that. But here's my pushback on that. In the 200 years of capitalism, as it's done all the great work you've detailed, it has been extremely volatile, not only in economic outcome, but it's been very, very volatile in political outcome as well. There are periods in different jurisdictions where being a business leader, you are the devil. And that too passes. You speak about millennials at 40-something% not liking capitalism. They don't like capitalism till they get their first paycheck and see how much tax they pay. Then things start to change. They become very conservative as they get older. I was too a very liberal 18-year-old until I got a job. Then I became a capitalist. And I realized that
I employ about 75,000 millennials at this point. And they don't necessarily change. It's a different generation with different values. That's the point of my presentation is the world is evolving, and we need to change the narrative of business. And yes, there's competition, and there's struggle to satisfy people, but business is fundamentally good. It's the value creator, and that's the narrative we should be telling.
Now let's talk about employee relations, because Kevin, I read your book, The Cold, Hard Truth. Now, this is the version that's primarily Canadian, but I presume a lot of the views in there are continuous. So here's one of your outlandish quotes from this book. I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I go to bed sometimes as late as midnight. I expect everyone who works for me to keep the same odd and ridiculous hours. Did you say that with a true, is this what you believe?
Yes, I believe that. And here's why. I do not impose hours on my employees. I simply get together with them, because we're almost a virtual company. I've got companies now where I either have control positions through debt or equity in almost every state, over 50 of them. And I say, look, I don't care about 9 to 5. It's irrelevant to me. Give me a goal for this quarter. and go do it. I don't care how or how long it takes you or whether you can or you can't. If we both agree on the goal, if we both agree that that's what we can achieve, you won't hear from me till the quarter's over. Now, if you miss our targets that we agree to together 3 quarters in a row, I am going to fire you. And I do. Because we agreed on those goals and we did them together. And I'm not in your face. And if I want to call you at 2 in the morning, pick up the phone, because I give you the reciprocal right. Everybody that I've invested in has my personal cell number. And what's amazing about that is the phone never rings. They respect my time as I do theirs. But if they have a problem, I hear from them. And if phone rings, I know it's important.
Well, I
do
have your cell phone number. Maybe I'll try it, call you at 2 in the morning and see what happens. So your business is a little more structured, John. Whole Foods, you're not a virtual business. You have to establish certain patterns. And I don't think you would impose this kind of restriction on your employees, right? They don't have to follow your own personal sleeping habits, right?
Well,
John,
I would say that in the spirit of what Kevin's saying, I don't think I'd call my senior executives at 2 o'clock in the morning. I might send them an email if I was up then. They'd see it first thing in the morning, or a text, because I'm also a very creative person, and I sleep weird hours as well, as my wife who's here will attest. But I do think I'd respect people have got to, I expect people at Whole Foods to work really hard, and they do. But I also know they have lives, they have families. And it's important that the job be something that they care deeply about, and they have a sense of purpose from it. But I do expect people also to care about other things in life. It's not whole life market, it's Whole Foods market.
You have a question?
I do. In the role of being their leader and manager, does goal setting, achieving it or not achieving it, have different outcomes for these people? Do you keep people that can't achieve goals, or do you terminate your mandate with them?
Of course. I mean, you have to measure, and you have to hold people accountable. And I think if you don't have accountability, then you'll have you won't be successful. So I hope people. I don't have a thumb that if somebody misses their targets 3 quarters in a row, they're going to get fired.
You don't fire like Jack Welch, the lowest 5%.
I don't think you should try to manage people by fear. And if people are, for one thing, then people start gaming their goals. It's like, well, I'm going to get fired if I miss this goal, so they're going to lowball the goal, and to make sure they don't get fired. I think when your people are scared, they're less creative. I think it's important you create a work environment where people feel safe, secured, and valued. And as you do that, you still have to hold them accountable. So if people consistently fail and don't do the job, then Kevin's right. You have to remove them. But I definitely do approach it differently than I think he does.
Kevin, I noticed in your book you use the term fire a lot. For example, here's a quote.
I could say terminate with extreme prejudice instead, but everybody knows what firing means.
Quote, this is from your book. Your desk says a lot about you. Keep it clean and orderly. If you work for me and I see a stuffed animal in your workplace, I'll light it on fire, then I'll fire you. Now, at what time in the morning did you write that?
I hate the stuffed animals. What can I say?
So you're not known as an emotional person, although on that wonderful video that everyone can Google or go to YouTube, you do tear up a little bit talking about your mother and your family.
Sure. Look, I'm not a robot. I have feelings. My whole thing about business, and this comes from my experiences in it, and what I hope is good mentorship now, because I spend a fair amount of my time teaching. I believe what I say because I've lived it, and I have a big problem, and this is a huge debate I had recently in a graduating cohort at Harvard, and I think it was a fair question, and I'll pose it for you too. I compared investing in two financial services companies, doesn't matter who they are. One had a very philanthropic CEO who was making decisions, hundreds of millions of dollars at a time, on charities that he liked, even though it was a global franchise. And he'd set up a committee, and I challenged him because I was a shareholder at that time and said, excuse me, sir, none of the charities you support are ones that I believe in. And I would prefer you gave me my portion of the profits so that I could distribute it to the charities that mean something to my family. And yet you've made that decision for me. And, you know, I think it's a fair question any shareholder can ask. He tried to position it as a great marketing vehicle. And the ROA on his balance sheet was lower than the woman who was running the other financial services, similar market capitalization. She had slightly higher distributions to her shareholders because she didn't give it away to charity. Who's right?
You know, Milton Friedman, there's a famous article where Milton Friedman and John Mackey had this big debate about the purpose of business and giving to charity. And Milton Friedman made that same point. Let me decide what their money should be used for. John, you took the position that it's a perfectly rightful thing for business to make this decision on how to use some of the profits for charity.
I mean, I agree with part of what Kevin said, and I disagree with another part, which is that, yeah, I don't think the CEO should be picking out his favorite charities to give money away from. That's irresponsible. But what I disagree is that I do think philanthropy can be part of an overall business's strategy in the world for lots of good reasons. For example, Whole Foods has 3 foundations. One foundation called the Whole Planet Foundation gives microcredit loans around the world, and we've given over 5 million of those now in over 72 countries. And most of those loans are less than $200. And it's had an amazing impact on the morale of our team member base, our customers. We have suppliers supporting it. And we only do that in places where we're trading. So we have to already have a relationship with those communities. We have another foundation called the Whole Kids Foundation, where we will give a salad bar or a school garden to any school in America that asks for it. And we've given away close to 10,000 salad bars now and over 6,000 garden grants. So these are two of our foundations, and they've had an amazing impact. So one of the things that's odd about, I always point this out with libertarians who see philanthropy as theft from the shareholders, it's like, there are serious problems in this world, and business is very good at solving problems. And yes, I think a small percentage of the money that a business makes should be done in strategic philanthropy that's consistent with the overall higher purpose and mission of the business. And how much, that's a question each corporation has to decide for itself. It should be transparent. If you're a public company, the shareholders should see it. It shouldn't be arbitrary. But at the end of the day, if corporations won't pitch in and help the nonprofit sector, you're basically asking the government to do more. And there's certain problems that government's not going to be able to solve, and we shouldn't ask them to solve it. I think nonprofits and corporations are better suited to do so.
Now, there's one final topic. Very good, John. John, I've heard you give talks to students, so let's talk about students. And you give a talk saying, follow your dream, follow your passion. I remember you giving this talk. Mark Cuban has said, and I don't know where you stand on this, Kevin, but he says, follow the green, not the dream. Follow the green, not the dream. I kind of suspect you are in the Mark Cuban camp, although it seems on Shark Tank, you and Mark Cuban, I don't know, you seem to be a little bit of tension there.
I know Mark very well. We don't agree on anything. and that's okay.
Makes for good television, though.
So it's.
But on this, maybe you do.
Well, his point, I think, is well taken, because many entrepreneurs fail not understanding that the original vision is not going to be the ultimate outcome. You have to learn how to pivot, and his point is you pivot to the green. You figure out where you can get revenue when you're small. None of the companies I've ever invested in ever made it on their original mandate. It was modified multiple times, and the men or women that ran them had figured that out by following what worked and generating sales. And that's, I think, what he means. What I don't agree with him on is structure. I'm way up on the balance sheet. He'll just do 2% equity, which I think is ridiculous. You'll never get your money back. You'll get diluted into oblivion. But that's a different discussion. But, you know, it's good we don't agree. I think it's great. But I think I'll leave it on this thought from my point of view. When I teach these kids that are graduating, the ones that say they want to be entrepreneurs, which is about a third of a class, whether they become entrepreneurs or not, it's different. I leave them with one message that I truly believe. If you think your job, I leave the class saying this, if you think your job is to solve all of the world's problems as a business leader, you're a fool and you will fail. Your mandate is to take care of your constituents, which are primarily your shareholders and your customers. If you fail there, you'll be terminated. And if you think telling everybody you're going to save every baby whale out there is why you're in business and why you've taken shareholder money, you're going to fail. So that's where you get a huge debate, because we are teaching a generation of business leaders not to care about shareholders anymore. And my message is, tread lightly on that one, kiddies. You're going to have a real hard time when you get out there. The real world is going to eat you alive.
So John, I'll give you the final word. We need to wrap up. So short response to that.
Well, I mean, he set up a false, exaggerated situation where you have to solve all the world's problems, save all the whales. I mean, yeah, you can't do that. No individual can do that. But you know what? Collectively, we can solve all the world's problems because human creativity is limitless. I always say that to the young people that criticize me, for example, it's like, how come you have these problems and these problems? I say, you know, when I got to this planet, it was really screwed up. It really was. It's a lot better today than it was when I was born. Your job, your mission as your generation is to solve the problems that my generation couldn't solve. So collectively, we have the intelligence and the creativity to solve the problems. And if we don't do it collectively, they're not going to get solved. Sure, you can just go after getting as much money as you can. But you know what? Life is short. Life is very short. It's too short to not to follow your heart and not to have and try to have as big an impact for the positive as you can possibly have. I've devoted my life to it. I've gotten very wealthy at the same time. You can do both.
Thank you. All right, so one final question from the audience. By a show of hands or by applause, how many are in Kevin O'Leary's camp? All right, how many are in John Mackey's camp?
That's why they call me Mr. Wonderful.
Great, thank you all very much. We'll see you at the luncheon with Kevin O'Leary. That was tremendous. That was great. Let's sit down.